Welcome back. Now, as we move into our Ignite Network sessions, we would like to welcome and hear from two individuals who are championing for a national autism strategy in Ottawa, the Honorable Judy Skrull and Senator Peter Beam. Since 1999, Judy Skrull has, as a Liberal MP for Humber River Black Creek, advanced an agenda that is progressive and respectful of human rights, equality, and religious freedom. Prior to federal politics, Judy represented her community on the North York City Council and Toronto City Council, where she focused on poverty and crime reduction. In Parliament, Judy has developed national solutions to local problems. As chair of the Prime Minister's Task Force on Urban Issues, she shaped policy on social housing, the creation of the gas tax rebates, and the promotion of human rights and religious freedoms. As Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, Judy championed family reunification and promoted systemic fairness. In opposition, Judy focused on issues as the official opposition critic for seniors and pension, the critic for veteran affairs, and the critic for the status of women, and as the liberal industry critic by releasing a pension reform white paper to study sexual harassment in the RCMP and a pension bill of rights. Judy now chairs a standing committee on international trade, the House Liaison Committee, and the Canada-Taiwan Parliamentary Friendship Group, the Parliamentary Friends of the Muslim Adamai Jabat, and the Parliamentary Friends of the Falun Gong. And Senator Peter Beam. Senator Peter Beam is a native of Kitchener, Ontario, and appointed to the Senate in October of 2018. As a former career Foreign Service officer, he has served as ambassador to Germany, minister at the Embassy of Canada to the United States, as well as ambassador to the Organization of American States, among other foreign postings. He is the former Deputy Minister of International Development, Senior Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Assistant Deputy Minister for the Americas, North America, on Consular Affairs. He has served several Prime Ministers as their personal representative, or Sherpa, for the G8 and G7 summits, as well as the Summits of the Americas and Nuclear Security Summits. Most recently, he was Deputy Minister and personal representative of the Prime Minister for the G7 summit held in Quebec in 2018 June. Senator Peter Beam holds a PhD in history from the University of Edinburgh, a Master's of Arts in International Affairs from the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs, and has an Honors Bachelor of Arts degree from Wilfrid Laurier University. So I welcome both Judy Skrull and Peter Beam for their messages.
Hello to everyone watching and participating from across the country, and thank you for your participation in the 6th Annual Canadian Autism Leadership Summit. The Canadian Autism Leadership Summit is an important time to gather experts, policymakers, and activists to discuss a national autism strategy, and I would like to begin by expressing my sincerest thanks to the organizers of the summit for giving me the opportunity to participate in this important discussion. I know that because of COVID-19 pandemic, we will be engaging with each other in a different way. And on that note, I want to thank the organizers for doing a fantastic job amid difficult circumstances. Last year, we made a big step forward by committing to the development of a national autism strategy. And we now look to implement CASDA's roadmap to a national autism strategy. A national autism strategy will ensure that Canadians with autism, their families and their caregivers get the support that they need. This includes equal access to resources, health care, and education that meets the unique needs of autistic Canadians and those who care for them. We need to improve the cost of living and increase affordability for autistic Canadians. We need to ensure that autistic Canadians have access to housing, and that means to pay for it. And we need to ensure autistic Canadians are welcomed into inclusive workplaces and have meaningful career options. CASDA's National Autism Strategy Blueprint provides a meaningful and sustainable plan for the implementation and execution of the NAS, and I am proud to put my full support behind this plan.
Hello, I'm Peter Beam. I'm very pleased to be asked by CASDA to contribute to this summit. I know a little bit about summits from my previous life, but never one like this. So, as both a legislator and the father of an autistic son, I hope to be helpful in working towards the realization of the National Autism Strategy. I want to acknowledge the work that has already been undertaken by CASDA, by various organizations across the country, and certainly by those individuals on the autism spectrum who have engaged and advocated meaningfully in pursuing what I see as our common objectives. I want to give credit too to my fellow legislators. Some of them have been at it longer than I have. In fact, most of them have, both at the federal and at the provincial level for their efforts over the years. We've had a number of false starts, but we need to do much, much better, of course. And there's much to do, and while the current pandemic circumstances might suggest a preoccupation with other policy initiatives, in my view, this is really an opportune time to connect, as we are doing here, to think and to push forward. On the personal side, my story is like that of many parents, with the exception that our son Nicholas traveled with us to foreign jurisdictions. I used to be in the Foreign Service. So all of his young life was not spent in Canada. Living with him both in the United States and Germany provided us with an opportunity to assess supports, and it has allowed me to assess Canadian approaches to autism, to dealing with people who are on the spectrum, and indeed to look ahead in a progressive sort of way. Here in Canada, we went through all the stations of concern that affect parents: diagnosis, supports, diets, respite requests, speech therapy, allergies, and any number of tests before we entered into a more final stage of acceptance and coping. Nicholas is fortunate to be in a small group home about 2 hours from Ottawa. We see him either at home here in Ottawa or they're there every 2 weeks. This pattern has been complicated by the pandemic, and there have been no home visits since March. So we go there and we observe the protocols. Distancing, as tough as it is, masking, as tough as that is, particularly for him. So that's our particular situation on the personal side. On the policy side, as we look ahead, there are a number of things we can focus on. At the start of the last mandate, the Prime Minister had included references to developing a national autism strategy in the mandate letters of the Ministers of Health and Employment, as well as the Minister of Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. It is my understanding that work on developing a national autism strategy had begun. What form it had taken before the pandemic, I don't know. I don't know what's going on right now, but I can say that Senator Jim Munson and I were involved in a few meetings way back in February. I'm advocating strongly that this work continue. CASDA has provided its blueprint. It is well thought out. I believe other organizations and individuals have also been active. It seems to me that work could advance in the first instance with the so-called low-hanging fruit. That is, a focus on initiatives forming part of a strategy that clearly fall within the purview of the federal government. For example, the government could broaden and deepen federal tax credit eligibility. It could provide stimulus and credit for employer funding for jobs. This in the context of this apparent review of EI and other programs that is underway. It could look at training programs as well, and also commission work on housing, which is in short supply and is very unaffordable for many people. And this last point, I think, is particularly true as provincial disability pension payments appear to be in danger in a few provinces, including in my own Ontario. There's an absence of accurate data. The federal government could and should work with the provinces to develop coherent data retrieval. There does not seem to be any real repository of data where programs can be compared between provinces. Such a repository would be essential in looking at best practices across various jurisdictions across the country. There should also be a mechanism to facilitate federal, provincial, and territorial coordination, and a component, and I'm very serious about this, to assess the needs of our Indigenous communities who are often left behind or not thought of at all. Finally, there is the public face. You can have advocates out there. It's great, it's noble, and there is some profile. But there has to be a coordinated public outreach policy from the government and from the governments as we move forward that is consistent, that seeks to break the stigma, and that points a way ahead. Making noises about yet another study is simply not going to cut it, in my view. There are studies and reports galore, including some produced by the Senate. It's time for some concentrated action, starting with what can be achieved in the shorter term. Good luck. I'm prepared to work with any and all on this to move things forward, and thank you for listening.
Thank you once again to the Honorable Judy Sgro and Senator Beam for your messages today. Now, very exciting, on to the Ignite Networks session. To provide some context here, an Ignite Talk is a series of quick 5-minute presentations that are grouped based on common themes and topics, in this case, networks. These talks are meant to be quick yet enlightening and give you a quick overview of the concepts so you can discuss ideas further in the chat and in the networking rooms. This series of Ignite Talks will address, as I mentioned, forming and building networks from local, regional to pan-Canadian initiatives that can be leveraged, of course, to guide the government's development of a national autism strategy. Of course, developing these networks, very key to that end goal. So in this Ignite Network session, we'll be hearing about the Preschool Autism Treatment Impact Study, A Tale of Two Provinces, by Dr. Isabel Smith, Family Services Community Grants, Achieving More Together, by Kathy Cosgrove, the Transforming Autism Care Consortium, Advancing Discovery, Training, and Community Integration, by Dr. Mayada Elzaba, Anna Katalifos, Dr. Mira Puri, and Dr. Fabienne Samson, and on Moving Forward Together, Development of a Pan-Canadian Strategy for Disability and Work, by Emile Tampa and Maureen Hahn. Now, full bio of the speakers can be found on our Summit website below the corresponding schedule card. You can access this by going to the homepage and then scrolling to the bottom. The homepage can be accessed by clicking on the Summit logo at the top of the page. At the end of each Ignite session, an autistic self-advocate has volunteered to share their opinions on what was discussed. This is very cool. Please join me in welcoming this session's discussant, Matthew Dever. You can find Matthew's bio alongside the bios of the speakers on the Summit website under the Ignite Talks Network card on the Day 1 Summit content page. And don't forget, speakers will be able to chat with speakers through the questions icon on the right-hand side of the screen. Remember, the chat only stays open for the duration of the session. Sit tight. The Ignite Talk Network session will begin momentarily.
I'm Isabel Smith, and I'm pleased to represent our research team and have this chance to share some of what we learned from the Preschool Autism Treatment Impact Study and why we think it should matter to others who are concerned about autism services in Canada. In the clinical and research worlds, we usually consider it important to identify children with ASD early in life and to provide services promptly. Most early intervention programs are designed, on the one hand, to build skills and opportunities in areas like communication, social relationships, and daily living skills or adaptive behavior. On the other hand, intervention should minimize conditions that cause distress for all involved. Together, these changes improve well-being for the child and family. However, the specific features of various early intervention programs vary, and we've almost no research comparing the effects of different approaches to intervention. Our Preschool Autism Treatment Impact, or PATI study, was designed to compare the publicly funded early intervention programs for young children with autism in 2 provinces, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Even though these provinces are next door to one another and similar in many ways, their services for preschoolers with autism are different in many important ways, including who diagnoses ASD, which government department is responsible for intervention, how long programs are, what methods are used, and so on. What did we find? First, we saw striking differences between the groups of children with autism who are starting early intervention in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. On average, children in New Brunswick were younger, had higher levels of adaptive behavior, milder autism symptoms, and fewer behavior problems. They were also getting nearly twice as many hours of intervention as children in Nova Scotia. However, children in the 2 provinces made progress at exactly the same rate and made similar gains. It may be that in Nova Scotia, even though fewer hours of treatment were delivered to older kids with more severe challenges, the consistent provincial program that included parent coaching may have been particularly effective, whereas in New Brunswick, treatment varied more. We also found that the cost of delivering services differed. Public costs were much lower in New Brunswick, where frontline workers made low salaries, although this has changed. Families also had to travel to bring their children to special centers. In Nova Scotia, therapists traveled to where the children were, usually a regular daycare or preschooler. The therapists were employees of the health system and made good wages, so they tended to stay on their jobs longer. But Nova Scotia families had to wait for the early intervention program, and they used other public and private services while they waited. So we learned that providing more therapy doesn't always lead to more progress. Different programs show different benefits. Nevertheless, parents in both provinces were very satisfied with the services their families received. We did see some evidence that parents in Nova Scotia particularly valued the coaching that they received in pivotal response treatment. Most importantly, we saw that the difference between the approaches taken by the 2 provinces resulted in different patterns of costs and benefits, and those costs and benefits accrued to different payers, government or families. Details about the PADI study's method and results are on our website or on our published papers. One of the major trade-offs the PADI study showed us is how policies concerning diagnosis of autism affect early intervention. This is a general issue that needs attention. Waiting a long time for a diagnosis means the children are older when they receive autism-specific interventions, potentially missing a window of opportunity when benefits might be greatest. However, it's also true that accurate diagnosis means that the children who are eligible for autism intervention genuinely need those specialized and costly services. When more children are diagnosed, it affects costs for governments, and this whole cycle affects distress for families. Our study highlighted differences in the impact of early intervention for children with ASD in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. But this variability exists across the country in eligibility criteria, departments responsible, how services are delivered. Meanwhile, several provinces and territories are reforming their systems to meet growing demands for autism services. The result is a patchwork of services across Canada. We need a national conversation and comparisons to figure out how to harness the best of what we have, because Canadian families deserve consistent and effective services no matter where they live. This is the PADI study team, the co-investigators, the collaborators, and many of our important research staff. We thank them, and we thank the participating families, early intervention providers in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, our funders, and our research partners.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Cosgrove, and I'm the Program Manager of Services and Supports with Autism Speaks Canada, and I will be presenting to you the Family Services Community Grants Program and highlighting how we can achieve more together through networking. The Family Services Community Grants Program is really rooted in the idea of funding locally and thinking nationally to help build capacity and access to services and supports for autistic Canadians and their families. The funding provides the means for organizations to come together and either pilot or replicate promising practices that are evidence-based. The program mandates collaboration, so it really builds sustainable relationships and those productive networks. It fosters innovation and promotes replication, and it establishes open sharing of resources to expand reach of the projects beyond the grant period. Based on identified needs of the community, special consideration is given to programs intentionally supporting the following areas of focus. If you take a look at this list, it really targets vulnerable communities that are currently underserviced and under-resourced. Since 2010, Autism Speaks Canada gave over $4.4 million to over 300 organizations to partner together on meaningful projects. And many of the relationships that were developed through this grant, the partnerships continue to work together on other meaningful initiatives that help the autism community. So let's take a look at 2019 grants. We had 94 proposals, 37 community reviewers, including self-advocates. There were 12 successfully funded projects, and a total of 47 organizations got to strengthen some of their networks and build promising evidence-based practices together. I'm going to highlight two grants from 2019 that one looks at remote communities, the other one looks at the aging autistic population. And I think both exemplify good partnership and the opportunity to expand further networking either locally or nationally based on the learnings. So the first project aimed to deliver technology-based early intervention services to a remote Indigenous community. So Fort Albany First Nation is only accessed by air or winter road. And the goals included providing a sustainable, culturally sensitive autism service delivery model using a virtual modality, and to create a framework for expansion of the model to other underserviced northern communities. This was a replication grant, so it took the successful virtual care model from HANDS and aimed to modify based on the unique needs of the partnering Indigenous community. Now, unfortunately, Fort Albany was significantly impacted by COVID-19 and was put back on lockdown protocols. But the network, meaning Autism Speaks Canada, HANDS, and other partners, are really problem solving to see how we can remove some of those roadblocks, and is a great example of how an existing network can really support a partnering agency in a time of need. The second project aims to develop and provide training at Seneca College that educates students and long-term care staff on the unique needs of autistic seniors. The goals included developing a manual that will be a resource for other caregivers, embedding training and curriculum for care-related programs such as nursing, gerontology, behavioral programs at Seneca, and to provide workshops for colleagues and community organizations to spread the knowledge. So this was an innovation grant. It identified a current gap in research and available resources to an underserved community, and the unique perspective of an educational institution, a healthcare provider, and a service agency that really specializes in behavior supports for older adults really was able to come together with their different perspectives to create something that will better the quality of life for autistic seniors in long-term care, as well as the caregivers that will be taking care of them now and in the future. Achieving more together. Well, by definition, networking is an exchange of information or services among individuals and groups with a common interest and the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. The Family Services Community Grants supports networking by establishing productive relationships with a common interest of supporting the autism community, and it facilitates the exchange of information through open source sharing. So I encourage you to strengthen and expand your network, leverage expertise and resources. Maybe you can check out past grants on our website or network with past grant recipients on our Connect platform, and consider innovating or replicating with collaborative partners and apply for a Family Services Community Grant in 2021, which will be announced in the coming months on our social media or website, because together we can achieve more, and networking is one of the best ways that we can support our community. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to our session. My name is Emil Tompa, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity to present to you our Pan-Canadian Strategy for Disability and Work with my colleague, Maureen Hahn. In our short 5-minute presentation, we'll provide you with a high-level overview of the strategy. Links to the full strategy are also provided on the last slide of this deck. Now, one of the initial goals of the Disability and Work in Canada initiative was to develop a vision and strategy for increasing employment of persons with disabilities that would inform and guide the efforts of governments, employers, and other stakeholders. That strategy has been developed. It was developed by and for civil society, and as such, it is a voluntary strategy, and we hope all Canadians will embrace and help advance it. We are now promoting the implementation of the strategy. The purpose of the strategy is to provide a framework for key community stakeholders, persons with disabilities, employers, labor, researchers, and all levels of government that identifies collaborative activities to increase meaningful paid employment of persons with disabilities. The strategy starts with a vision statement, and our vision is that employment throughout Canada is inclusive, where persons with and without disabilities have equal opportunity and choices in careers, jobs, and work. This diagram presents the key components of the strategy. It includes 2 pillars, as you see in purple on each side: disability confident and inclusive workplaces, and comprehensive supports for persons with disabilities. The foundations of the strategy are built on effective partnerships, and the strategy takes an intersectional lens and life course perspective. It also includes core values, principles, and promotes evidence-informed approaches. This slide provides more details about the 2 pillars of the strategy. What we mean by disability confident and inclusive workplaces is that employers and businesses understand the value and are committed to hiring, managing, accommodating, supporting, and retaining persons with disabilities. What we mean by comprehensive supports is that persons with disabilities are supported in their pursuits of meaningful employment, and while being assured of income and benefits that provide a life with dignity and above the poverty line.
The strategy has overarching principles. For example, we adhere to the United Nations Convention on the Rights for Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD. We respect the rights of persons with disabilities as individuals, as well as the vital role of collective commitment to their inclusion and support. We strongly adhere to nothing about us without us. Some examples of key proposed initiatives for disability confident and inclusive workplaces include providing supports to businesses and employers for recruiting, hiring, onboarding, and accommodating workers with disabilities. And we design these supports so that they can be tailored to the context. Some other examples for key proposed initiatives for comprehensive supports include ensuring income support is adequate to avoid poverty. Ensure earnings exemptions are sufficient to encourage pursuit of employment and ensure that persons with disabilities have access to affordable housing. It's extremely important to unbundle the income benefits and employment supports, providing affordable childcare and providing a universal pharmacare program. Effective partnerships and examples about how they can work include making sure that the governments, federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal, First Nations communities all work together in partnership with all of the other stakeholders. that employer associations, business champions, and unions are working together to promote that culture of inclusion, and that educational institutions work with stakeholders to better support the employability of persons with disabilities over their life course. As far as measurement and accountability, examples of activities and measures include developing an outcomes framework and an outcomes-based tracking system to identify key indicators of progress towards the desired outcomes and to collect the data in ways that facilitate research. We need to develop a reporting plan to promote that accountability and create a repository of initiatives and resources that have worked well. We are hosting our 4th annual conference this November 25th and 26th, as well as December 1st and 2nd. It will be a virtual conference, and I encourage you all to attend. I look forward to virtually seeing you all there. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us at the CASDA Leadership Summit. My name is Mayada El-Sabag. I am the Director of the Transforming Autism Care Consortium, a research network in the province of Quebec. Our network was launched only a few years ago as a result of grassroots efforts to break down silos in autism research and to mobilize our collective strengths as a community. Joining me today to tell you more about TAC are Anna Katalifos, our policy intern, Dr. Fabienne Sanson, our senior program manager, and Dr. Mira Puri, manager of science initiatives at the Azrieli Foundation and a member of our training advisory. Anna?
Thank you. The Transforming Autism Care Consortium is a research network that connects and mobilizes Quebec's strengths in autism research to improve the quality of life of people with autism and their families. We're a provincial thematic network supported by the FRQS and the philanthropic organizations listed below. We support research, offer training opportunities, integrate evidence-based knowledge and services and policy, strive to connect all stakeholders in ASD research. Since our launch in 2017, we have seen our network grow to over 600 members and affiliated with 15 universities and health centers across the province. Our membership is composed of researchers, trainees, clinicians, professionals, autistic individuals, and their family members like myself. My younger brother is on the spectrum, and policymakers. All projects fall under 3 strategic objectives. The first being discovery, which is mainly characterized right now by our Quebec 1000 Families project. Capacity building, which is anything involving training of whether it be professionals or research stagiaires, and community integration, which is all about fostering positive relationships between all stakeholders of autism research.
So Q1K is the flagship project of the TAC network that will give autistic individuals and their families an opportunity to participate in research as they access clinical services. The Q1K project will create open research resources that will enable new discoveries across fields of research. The Q1K clinically integrated research infrastructure will facilitate the integration of evidence-based knowledge in services and care. In addition to existing TAC support, the project recently received transformative support from the Fondation Marcel et Jean Coutu that will enable the Q1K teams to engage 1,000 families by the end of the year 2024. This novel and innovative project has multiple strengths and highlights. For instance, the project relies on the collaboration of over 10 principal investigators with complementary expertise in autism across 6 institutions, and that will enable the engagement of families across the entire province. Based on the principles of learning health systems, families will be engaged as they access clinical services, and their clinical data can be extracted for use in research. Research results can then be returned to clinicians and to families in order to improve quality of life and clinical practice. Q1K is also a next generation cohort, meaning that it's building on previous international cohort and responding to recognized challenges in scientific discovery. The Q1K cohort will also include people across the lifespan and across the entire spectrum. Finally, following the principles of open science and the mission of our network, the Q1K resources will be accessible to researchers in Quebec as well as abroad. Mira?
Training and capacity building through the Quebec Autism Training Program, known as QART, is a key element of the TAC Network's mandate to grow the connectivity of trainee researchers and professionals. Through a competitive application process that includes external review, 12 trainees are selected each year and commit to a 3-year multidisciplinary program that strives to expose trainees to a broad community of research approaches. Trainees are invited to develop academic and leadership skills by contributing to program design, planning events and co-learning activities such as workshops and seminars, and community engagement events, in addition to the research program that they engage in their host labs and clinics. This year, the program welcomed its 3rd cohort. What does the Q-ART program offer? First, trainees selected for the program are eligible for 1 year of stipend funding. Second, each year, all cohorts of students converge for 1 week of collective study at the annual summer school, an immersive learning experience designed to connect trainees with over 35 mentors from diverse research sectors for knowledge exchange and career development activities. Q-ART also offers each student a training passport that includes funds for community and academic engagement and career building. It is through this immersive and ongoing engagement that Q-ART strives to build the network of professionals who will collaboratively contribute to advancing the diagnosis and treatment for autism. We're also pleased to share at this time that we're working with researchers and organizations across Canada to expand the reach of the research training program to a national scale, and in a way that will include not only researchers and trainees, but also the professionals who provide services to the autism community. Back to you, Anna.
Community integration projects are geared towards bringing together individuals that are on the spectrum, their families, professionals that work with them every day, and research. The specific objective is set in place to foster meaningful relationships between all stakeholders of autism research and to generate a sense of safe space and community amongst the entire network. Community integration has 3 main highlights. The first being bringing together the TAC community and maintaining an ongoing connections through monthly research forums, monthly newsletters, and our annual scientific conference. We also empower inclusion by bringing together autism communities by showcasing local success stories and developing an inclusive society, exemplified by our Autism Festival this coming year in 2021. And we provide an organizational framework for a range of collaborative activities and partnerships to advance research, training, and societal impact. Ayada?
In closing, we invite you to interact with us throughout the CASDA Summit and beyond. We would like to hear your thoughts and suggestions on the intersection between research, community engagement, and policy. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to watch the Ignite presentations on networks. These 4 presentations really stress the importance of networking and collaborating with the vast group of stakeholders that support autistic individuals across Canada. Now, I've been asked by CASDA to provide some reflections on these presentations as an autistic self-advocate. My name is Matthew Dever, and I'm an autistic parent of 5 kids, 3 of them who are also autistic, and we live in Ontario. Nothing about us without us. This is the mantra of the disability rights movement that many autistic self-advocates like myself believe in strongly, and it is good to see this acknowledgement in these presentations today. Engage autistics in research. This helps to build the supports and accommodations that we need in income supports, earning exemptions, housing, and other supports that can increase our quality of life. Measuring outcomes is important to ensure that the supports that are being built actually meet the needs and are supporting autistics sufficiently. Training researchers in multidisciplinary programs. It's important that researchers come into contact with a wide and diverse spectrum of disciplines and ideas of all aspects of autism. Connect communities and bring all stakeholders together and openly share research. It's important to share these results and processes in larger events like conferences and the Autism Festival, and the ability to do things virtually opens up and makes this more accessible for the wider community of especially autistics, many of us who find virtually connecting much easier than physically being present, like this CASDA Summit. A tale of 2 provinces, or a tale as old as time, or at least Confederation. A big problem we have in Canada, and in the world of policy related to autism, is that there is very little research comparing results or outcomes of different approaches to early supports. We need to improve this so that we can compare and evaluate the benefits and outcomes of the supports for autistic children that governments fund. What we heard very clearly today, and what we have seen throughout the 10 provinces and 3 territories that make up Canada, is that policy and program differences yield different costs and benefits, but the results may be similar. Longer wait times for diagnosis means kids are older when they have access to the supports that they may need. And then there are varying policies and standards across Canada and no guaranteed equitable access to high quality supports. The importance of networking. Networking and collaborating allows us to build on the research to plan programs in new areas. It allows us to reuse programs and research in new places rather than constantly reinventing the wheel. Now, by connecting educational institutions, healthcare providers, and service agencies, we can close the gap between the research and the actual delivering of supports that can increase the quality of life of autistic individuals. And we need all stakeholders to strongly consider innovating or replicating programs by collaborating with a wider network. So to summarize this important part of the summit, we will make great gains at improving the quality of life of autistic individuals of all ages if we include autistics in the research, the development of policy and training, and if we build broad networks locally, provincially, and nationally so that we can collaborate on research and establish strong programs and supports with a mindset of improving autistic lives and that have strong measures of outcomes and data that can help develop good policies. And governments across Canada need to work together and collaborate and share their policies and work towards standards to provide equitable and adequate supports for autistic Canadians of all ages, regardless of which province or territory they live in. And I hope all these presentations have given you ideas to think through and act on, and it has been an honor to give this reflection today for the CASDA Summit attendees. And please enjoy the rest of the summit. There are many great presentations and keynote speakers that have much to share with us all. Thank you.
Wow, that was just great. Our first Ignite session. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for their illuminating talks. At this time, if you could, if I might ask you to take a moment to answer our polling questions. You can find them on the website above the Ignite Talk card, or you can click on the link that will appear in the next few seconds magically in the live chat. Next up, we are taking a short break. It's a virtual summit, of course. You might be alone in your room, but no reason not to be social. Feel free to network on AirMeet or take a break and check out our riddle list on the summit website under the Activities Corner menu tab. Just because this is a virtual summit doesn't mean we can't have fun, doesn't mean we can't network and socialize and meet people. The first person related to those riddles to post all of the correct answers on social media using the hashtag CALS2020, CALS 2020 will win a prize. They will win this dollar store archery set that is missing all of the arrows that belongs to my son. He will be upset and it will be your fault. I'm just kidding. You're going to get a prize that's much better than that. Although if you want the archery set, I'll give it to you if you direct message me, but there's also a better prize. Also, when you have a chance, take a look at the poster list found on our Summit website main menu or under Day 1 Summit content below the poster presentation card, and take note of the table numbers of the presentations you want to visit. Click the Canadian Autism Leadership Summit logo at the top of the page to reach the homepage of the Summit website.